Welcome back to Chattatasholi. My name is Jennifer Byram, and I'm a research associate in historic preservation, filling in for Megan Baker today as host. Today we're joined by Dawn Standridge, a research assistant at Wheelock Academy Historic Site in Millerton, Oklahoma. Dawn will be presenting a history of Wheelock Academy for us today. The school was established in 1832 as a missionary day school, later became a Choctaw Nation-funded boarding school for Choctaw girls. It officially closed in 1955 after educating generations of Choctaw women. Today, Wheelock Academy Historic Site includes the grounds and surviving buildings of a boarding school. Like many community members, Dawn's mother and also possibly her grandmother, she can correct me, attended Wheelock as a student. I'll hand it over to Dawn now to present, but please share your questions in the Q&A, and we will read these off after her talk. Thanks, Dawn, for being here today, and I'll pass it over to you to go ahead and unmute and tell us all about it.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yay, okay. Yes, you are correct. I had a mother, but I've also had a grandmother and a great-grandmother who attended Wheelock. So 3 generations of my women in my family attended Wheelock. So I have a very vested interest in seeing its story told. And that's why I kind of like doing this stuff, even though I'm a little bit nervous. I did presentations in front of, lots of people, but for some reason this one's really had me kind of scared a little bit. But we'll go ahead and go on and see if I can get this thing going really well. Okay, let's just go ahead and jump into it. All right, I like using quotes, and Peter Pitchling was one of those individuals who really appreciated education and wanted it. So I've used a couple of his quotes in this presentation. And the first one, of course, is, "We have been taught by experience that the surest way to improve the condition of our people is to educate the females, exalt them, and a nation will at once be exalted." And I think that's pretty much what he had in mind when he started with the Choctaw General Council and the education system with the Choctaws. A little bit of brief history. I won't go into it in greater detail because definitely can come to the new Choctaw Cultural Center and see it highlighted. So, but I'll just go over it a little bit. Choctaws had contact with Europeans for almost 3 centuries. And through that contact, they knew that formal education was going to be a very important aspect for us to continue to survive as a nation. So they began inviting missionaries in. Missionaries' purpose was to come in and establish mission sites, places of worship. But what our people were looking for is the schools itself. So one of the main ones that came in, especially to our area, was the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions. And they were comprised mainly of Presbyterian and Congregationalists. So these are the individuals that came into our country initially. As you can see what Choctaw Nation looked like back in the 1800s. But that's what we were wanting, is those schools that they would help establish there. A little bit about, as you can see in this this graphic here, all the different treaties that the Choctaws endured during, which decreased our tribal land base. So, and it started in 1801 and it continued throughout the years. With pressure from the settlers and U.S. government, it all came together under the Indian Removal Act, which was enacted in May of 1830. Yes, May of 1830. And the first treaty signed underneath that act was the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, which was the Choctaws Removal Treaty. Through there, this led to our Trail of Tears, where approximately 12,000 of our people removed from our traditional homelands to Indian Territory. It's called Trail of Tears because about 4,000 of our people passed as they made that journey from the homelands to Indian Territory. But once here, our people focused on what was important, which was creating that stability and order that was needed. So one of those things was establishing the school system again. So, which led to Alfred and Harriet Wright. Reverend Wright was appointed as a missionary to the Choctaws in 1820. He was with the American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions. He was successful in establishing at least 2 schools in our homelands. And he had made a great many friends with the district that he was working with. So when the Choctaws were moved to Indian Territory, he and his wife made that journey as well, arriving a little bit after they got there in October of 1832. And he got right to work establishing a mission site there. From the schools that he established in the homelands, he realized that one of the major problems was the language. There was no written language, so that all those missionaries were having trouble with their teaching and stuff. So he would get to work along with Cyrus Byington, Peter Pitchlin assisted with them, as well as other missionaries. But they got to work to translating and publishing materials in Choctaw. And he would continue doing this until he passed in March of 1853. I believe it was 1853 is when he passed. But that was something that he would continue to do until his death. And a lot of the materials that he and Reverend Byington produced is something we still use today. That the Choctaw hymnals, a lot of the hymns you would see in there is those that he and other missionaries translated. Next one. So Wheelock Mission was started as a small log cabin in 1833. And that was the beginning of the school in 1833. He named Wheelock after his mentor, Eliza Wheelock, who was the first president of Dartmouth College. So that's how we got that name. So back during that time, a lot of the students would board with the missionaries nearby. A lot of them were orphans, or they had to travel great distances, so they were just staying with the missionary families as they attended school. Back in 1842, that's when the Choctaw General Council decided they needed to enact legislation to create a national school system. So at that time, once they were allowed to do that, then they were allowed to give them some more money so these schools would have some funding from the Choctaw Nation. So when they enacted the school system, Wheelock was able to expand to build a new dorm and a new school at the site that Reverend Wright created. So it opened in 1843 with 52 students, and 34 of those students were in nearby homes, missionary homes and stuff. What you see on the screen is the Wheelock Church. It was started being constructed in 1844 using limestone from sandstone from a nearby quarry, and it was completed in 1847. And as I believe, they still say that it is the oldest church in Oklahoma. So it's not currently in use, and people occasionally will rent them out for weddings and that type of thing, but it has not been used regularly for a good number of years. Okay. This school would continue as it is until the time of the Civil War. And that's when we started having a little bit of issues, because the American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions had wanted the Choctaw Nation to take a stand against Civil War or against slavery. But unfortunately, many of the leaders, our tribal leaders, were mixed blood slave owners. So they did not want to side against the Confederacy. So the American Board would terminate the sponsorship with the school at that time. Also, the superintendent there, John Edwards, he wanted to remain neutral as well, but because of some of the individuals in the area, he felt threatened because they had wanted him to say, go with the Confederacy. but he didn't think the state should secede from the Union because of slavery and stuff. So he ended up leaving Wheelock at that time, and then not too long after that, the school was just closed, and they would not exist throughout the Civil War. After the Civil War, the school would reopen as a neighborhood school. The Choctaw General Council opened it as neighborhood schools or subscription schools, which meant that students would, the guardians or parents of the students would have to pay a fee, monthly fee for their students to go to school there. So that would continue on for a little bit until 69. The dates kind of jump around on it, but 69 or 71 is the most commonly used dates. Excuse me, that the school, the dormitory caught fire, which caught the other buildings on fire. So we lost the dormitory, the school, and some of the other buildings, and even parts of the church got burned down during this fire. So the school would completely close at that time. In 1882, some of the students were going, some of the females, Spencer Academy became a co-ed school for a little bit. But the Choctaw General Council decided we needed another school. So in 1883, they appropriated funds for a new boarding school, and Wheelock was chosen. The original site was not going to be used, and what was chosen was a site approximately 400 yards northeast of the old mission buildings, and that is where we currently reside. That's where our historic site is at now. So a dormitory and school were built, as well as a storehouse, a laundry, and so that was all being built in 83. So when they completed it in 1884, so classes were able to begin in the fall of 1884. I believe they had 15 students at the time. William Robe and his family lived there in the dormitory as well with those 15 students. After a while, some of the Choctaw leadership were identifying other students to come to the school. So somewhere late in 1884, they did have approximately 50 students, and that's what was their target at that time when they reopened. Okay, so this is originally what Pushmataw Hall looked like. It had a planned capacity of 50 students. It had a large kitchen, dining hall with rooms for students as well as the faculty. The Rope family actually lived on the bottom floor in a suite of rooms. And when I say, I do this presentation to students from middle school on up, and when I tell them that living conditions were primitive at first, it doesn't click to them how primitive it was until I tell them they had no running water, they had no electricity, they had outside toilets, or I even refer to, slop buckets or what do they call them? Slop jars that were used as toilets. So that's kind of confusing for younger people. They don't realize how primitive these homes could have been, and these places could have been. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, you see a picture of the Pushmataw Hall and the school building. The original school building was to the east of Pushmataw Hall. It would be moved later on. Go to that one. It was a one-story, two-room structure. They did add on a little bit to it a couple of years later, but in the 1910, they would move the building, and I still haven't figured out how they did that or why they did that. But they moved the school building, from the east side of Pushmataw Hall to the west side, and that was done in 1910. And it would exist like that for a little bit until I realized they needed a much bigger building. So the original building was taken down, and the new school building was built in 1922, and that's Wilson Hall, and that's what is there on our campus right now. It's Wilson Hall. It had 4 schoolrooms, an auditorium. A little bit later, they would build on a basement, and in that basement, they would build a gymnasium to play basketball. So that's, you can kind of even look in the buildings. cracks in the buildings and see what the original, they took up all the wooden floors and stuff in the gymnasium, but you can kind of see what it looks like in there. But that was Wilson Hall. So additional buildings would be added on over the years. I think they ended with 18 buildings, but very early on, the buildings would be a laundry, teacher's dormitory, bathhouse, a dairy barn. They would add on a caretaker's cabin, the superintendent's office, her cottage, or the superintendent's cottage. So all those would be added on over the years. The Choctaw General Council did allocate 190 acres to Wheelock. 120 of those were hay meadow, 60 were used for gardens and orchards, and they were just pasture land at that time. So only about 10 acres of land had buildings on it, had those 18 buildings on it. Curriculum. Very early on, because it was run by missionaries, the curriculum was mainly focused on using the Bible as part of their major, like a textbook type thing. They would often read from it, memorize passages out of it, and I'm pretty sure they probably practiced their handwriting, copying passages out of the Bible. They used the Lancastrian plan, and that just meant that some of the older students, or those who are a little bit more advanced, would help teach the younger ones. They would be under the guidance of the teacher at the time, but they would help teach the younger ones. So that's probably was good for them because that was reinforcing their schoolwork as well, but it also was helping the teachers by having an extra hand there to help with the younger ones. They spent a lot of time on the 3 R's, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but they also did, as they advanced, the years advanced and stuff, they added geography. There were even classes on philosophy, astronomy, English grammar, of course, and stuff. Mornings were usually dedicated to those academics, where they were just doing all this normal schoolwork and stuff. In the afternoons, they would have the vocational training or domestic arts, which meant they were doing a lot of the learning about how to cook and canning food, sewing, and maybe even some things like, well, I know, like crocheting and those type of things. That's what they were doing in the afternoons. They also added later on, early on, Superintendent Robe knew that music was very good for educational purposes, access to organs and pianos and stuff like that. So the girls were exposed to music, and he even stated at one point that they were very, very much. These were very popular as well. They did clear a large area that was just south of the dormitory. They cleared that area for sports, so they had an outside basketball court for the longest time there before they built the new schoolhouse with the gymnasium there. I had read that in the 1940s that any child that was over the age of 10 and was physically able, they were required to participate in some kind of sport. Some of the sports they had was obviously basketball, but he also played soccer, I found that quite interesting, tennis, softball, and even listed horseshoes as one of the sports these girls would play. They eventually had teams organized, and if you come to our museum, you will see a lot of pictures of these girls playing their basketball uniforms and stuff with trophies and stuff. So obviously they were pretty good at playing that sport. They also had a variety of other student organizations, including the Glee Club, music clubs, and crocheting, Girl Scouts, that type of thing. So they were all involved in different activities and stuff. So it was really kind of interesting seeing all these things that these girls were able to do. Their Glee Club, you can see them in that lower right-hand corner, they would attend, they were asked to churches and other organizations where they would perform for these organizations. Okay, during the final years of Wheelock, it was funded primarily through the Choctaw Nation, or the tribal government and stuff. They had revenue from mineral rights, that type of thing. But during the Great Depression, this was becoming difficult for them to do so, to keep funding these schools. So at that time in 1932, the US government assumed both financial and administrative duties over Wheelock. So when that took place, up until that time, the school was just open to Choctaw girls, but when the federal government took over, any girl that was of a Native descent could come to Wheelock and attend school there. So we have documentations that, girls that were Muskogee Creek and other tribes that did come to Wheelock to spend their time there. In 1932, we had 14 buildings there at the time and 130 students enrolled. So, and then also, when the federal government took over, it was no longer religion oriented. They still had, opportunities to go to church, and they had some time where they had Bible study and that type of thing. But it was not a major aspect of the whole school after the government took over. Academics as well as vocational training was still emphasized. So they were still doing a lot of the academics, but still, sewing dresses. A lot of them, if you look in the lower right-hand corner with all the girls in their white dresses, they made all their dresses. So that was still something they were focused on doing. I know my mother was a marvelous seamstress, and she made both my prom dresses and my wedding dress and everything. So this is something that she probably learned while she was at Wheelock, is learning how to sew. The school closed in 1955. The Commissioner of Indian Affairs closed it. There are several reasons that were given, is that they were wanting to integrate a lot of these girls back into a public school system. But it was also said that any school that had less than 80 students were required to close. So Wheelock had about 75 at that time. I don't know about how well the integration took place, because a lot of these girls did end up going to Jones Academy. And so that was another Native American schools, or they would go to Chilocco. And in the case of my mother, she spent 1 year in Antlers, I believe, and then transferred to Sequoia High School, which is another Native boarding school, which is still in existence. And she graduated from there. At the time of the school's closing, there was 18 structures on campus, including a clinic, a larger teacher's dormitory, office building, and 3 automobile garages, which I did not know until recently that they had places to house their vehicles and stuff at. So that was kind of interesting. So what do we have today? We has a museum and gift shop. We have in the LaFleur McCurtain Hall, which used to be the former staff dormitory. We just the museum holds memorabilia.
Hey, Dawn, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. It just cut out a little bit. It just got a little choppy. So maybe if you want to start at the beginning of that slide again, we can jump back in. But you're good now. So thanks.
Well, I was just saying that LaFleur Hall was the former staff dormitory, and we recently updated it with new informational panels that tells more of a timeline story, history of Wheelock. The museum holds a lot of memorabilia. We still have a lot of pictures and artifacts and stuff like that that students and their families have donated to us. But it also houses the gift shop, and we just recently started adding beads because we have a lot of beadwork artists in our area, and it's been hard to find beads in this area without having to travel a couple of hours or just ordering it online. If they're like me, I like seeing what the bead colors look like in real life instead of trying to order from a catalog. So that was something that we're kind of glad we started with people. But we're also pretty proud of the informational panels that we worked really hard on those. So we hope you get to come out and check those out. Attempts at restoration. After closing, no suitable use could be found for the facility projects that would rehab the floor hall because it was in bad shape until they did that. And it was used for a short time as a rehab facility for men. And then it was until 91, I believe. And then they started saying we needed to have a museum there. So they started working on that. After a while, Wheelock Academy was declared a priority 1 target of concern. Push Hall did have its foundation improved and re-roofing took place, but unfortunately, like I said, the roof's good, foundation is all right, but that middle section there is the whole issue that we have. That is, it's kind of hurts our heart looking at it, but we haven't. I'll get to that in a second and stuff. But that's where they did a little bit of restoration, but it just hasn't been completely done to a point that it is entirely usable. And my first day at Wheelock was February 9th, 2015. And my first day there, we had historical architects, engineers, and they were going to be working on a feasibility study. So my first day there, I got to go into all these buildings, and this is where all these pictures come from. Because these buildings are not safe, but also, we're dealing with a lot of dust and mold, and they have indicated maybe a little bit of asbestos and stuff. So it's not very healthy to be in there breathing all this stuff. So, but I took a lot of pictures and I try to put them in presentations so individuals can see kind of what it looks like inside. So this is the first floor of Pushmatawa Hall. We have the dining hall with the yellow pillars there, the staircase and hallways. I just want to make quick reference to the picture on the far right, the little closet with the bench. This is the closet that's underneath the stairs. And we have heard several stories from several of our former students who said that since Choctaw was not emphasized, or let me rephrase that. They were very discouraged from speaking the tribal language, their tribal language. They would get in trouble. The very extreme would be put in this closet, and that was their punishment if they were caught speaking Choctaw. There were lesser punishments such as extra chores and that type of thing. This closet always I have never been able to get myself to walk in that closet because one, it's small and I'm a little bit claustrophobic, but it's also very dark. So I just can't imagine as a young girl being put in there doing something that will come naturally to her. So that's one of the pictures I always wanted to focus on, and something I always want to make sure that the students that are individuals I'm speaking to realize that was something that did happen. This is the second floor. As you can see, the condition of Pushmatawa Hall is not good. It's a lot of water damage and stuff like that in there, and there's birds and bats and all sorts of critters running their muck in there. For some reason, I have not gotten any inside pictures of Wilson Hall, and I don't know why, because that one's a little bit easier to get into. But these are the outside pictures of Wilson Hall. You can see the back side there where they added the basement and the gymnasium. the picture, the lower right-hand picture shows a couple of pillars there, and that's what used to be a walkway. They created a trellis, a walkway for the girls to go from the dormitory to the school building. And what it was is they planted roses. So these roses would grow up around the pillars and through the trellis and over the trellis. And so these girls were able to walk through this tunnel of roses from their dormitory to their classrooms. We're hoping that we maybe somewhere down the road we'll get to redo that. Part of it's doing research on what kind, asking the ladies what color were the flowers, that type of thing, so we can probably pick something as close as possible to recreate that. Just some of the other buildings. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we are on part of the Choctaw Trail of Tears. And that first picture on your far left shows the marker for the Trail of Tears that came through there. And then we have the chimneys for the domestic science building and the arts and crafts building. And the last two pictures on the far right are the bathhouse. And just some of the pictures of the ground. The building is the hot water plant. They were able to steam pressure water eventually to the building so they would have hot water. The other part is the pond that was created when they dammed up the creek that the original site was put next to. And then the part of the field there as you come into Wheelock. So the museum has operated for a good number of years, just educating the public about Wheelock. That's what our mission is there. But there has been a renewed interest in preserving the remaining buildings. As I said earlier, when I started in 2015, they were doing a feasibility study. So it's done. So we're just now awaiting a decision from tribal leadership on what we can do, what can be done. So right now we're in that holding pattern. We don't know exactly what's going to happen to Wheelock. But we're still going to work as a museum and still going to educate on the history and of Wheelock and its impact on our Choctaw Nation and our families. And so part of that, part of what we do is all these different activities at Wheelock. COVID has kind of put a stop to a lot of that. We have not been able to hold a lot of activities like we normally do. We part of it, what we do and offer is cultural activities. We would hold make and take sessions at Wheelock where you see a little boy Atticus there. He learned how to do cornhusk dolls and he fixed it up really nice. We'd have days where students could come out and do a choppy, play games. We've had pottery firings, and you see we have a field back behind our little creek behind our museum that is wild onions. We have a wild onion patch. So we have a lot of individuals who come out there and they're always calling us early spring are they up yet? It's like, oh, I don't know. So that is part of our culture, is going out and, because I remember doing that with my grandmother, going and digging up wild onions. One of my favorite things that we haven't been able to do, and I was making plans on it, but we might have to put a stop on that, is movie nights at Wheelock. We were able to host movies 3 times a year since 2015, and people come out. It's usually a native focused movie. I try to find something along those lines, but everything's free. We invite everybody in the public to come out to Wheelock, hang out with us, watch a movie. We usually try to have some popcorn. I just got a new popcorn machine. Haven't been able to use it yet, but have popcorn, drinks, and stuff like that, and come spend time with us out there. And that allows people, who haven't been out to Wheelock, can't tell you how many times we've heard that they lived there all their lives and haven't been out there. But for them to be able to come out and view the place at night is kind of cool. And hopefully, we got our fingers crossed, if we can't do it this year, that we'll be able to start doing it again in 2022. School days. We did have a couple of schools come out this late spring, early summer. So they were smaller groups. So we were trying to keep it small just because we were still on a tail end, what we thought at that time of COVID. So, but some of the people we work with, we did a little less, and Ross with Cultural Services have come out and helped us out a lot. But a lot of the people that come help us is with historic preservation, and they've done a great job. And see that gentleman there with the horse is Nick Wallace. He's not with historic preservation anymore, but he would come out and talk about Choctaw Light Horsemen, which I learned a lot from him on that. The pictures to the left there are, we had a beading group come out and spend time at our site, just beading, working on activities. Other Choctaw Nation programs, like the one with the Poe with the ribbons, is with domestic violence. They came out there and hosted a day to talk about domestic violence and stuff. The long picture with all the gentlemen, they are in red high heels or red shoes, and that was a red shoe day, and that was part of April's Sexual Assault Awareness Month activity. So that was the coolest activity, and I missed having that out here the last 2 years. But they're just a great, for them to every one of those gentlemen that came out there, even if they didn't know what was happening, they put on some red heels or put on some red shoes to help support survivors of sexual assault. So that was mad props to those guys. And then, of course, we have senior days. That picture there, the two gentlemen grilling, is District Councilman Thomas Williston, District 1 Councilman Thomas Williston, and Jimmy Lohman. Yeah, they're cooking up for their senior participants, and I miss having them out there too, because they're just a great group of people. And I've been missing people a lot because we're having to keep things close because of COVID. And one of the other main things that we have started out at Wheelock is we're part of the Growing Hope project. And it is formally called the Preserving Choctaw Culture by Growing Hope. It was a USD community project that was finished by the Choctaw Nation in partnership with Oklahoma State University. There are 3 gardens. They have one at Tushkahoma, they have one at the Cultural Center in Durant, and then we have ours at Wheelock. So if you can see there, some of the pictures, some of them, the gourd pictures, the one with the frog, that was from last year, and then the picture on the far lower right is of myself and our Growing Hope intern at the time, Caleb Trusty. We grew 28 pretty good sized Choctaw sweet potato squash. So that's, we were pretty proud of that. See us all there smiling there. The main goals of the Growing Hope project is to grow enough Choctaw heritage plants to build up a supply of seeds, and we would be able to distribute these seeds to tribal members so they could start growing these plants themselves. The final goal was to create ways for tribal members to sell what they were growing. That one's was hard to do because of the pandemic. So that, they were thinking about doing farmers markets and that type of thing, but because of the pandemic, they weren't able to push that last goal as much as they would wanted to. At this point, from last I heard, they were able to distribute about seeds to about 3,000 tribal members. So there are other individuals out there growing these plants, and we're pretty excited for them. We're really excited about the 2 top pictures there. One with the little yellow flower and the little bulb at the bottom, and then the watermelon looking gourd or plant right next to it. Those are bottle gourds, I believe is what Ian called them. And these gourds, I have to read it. These gourds are from a pre-contact earth mound found in Carroll County, Mississippi. These gourds continue to plant themselves and survive out there for centuries. The gourds were collected after the site before the site was destroyed. So Mr. Allen Winters grew them for a while and gave some seeds to Historic Preservation, which are the Grow and Hope program at that time. Those seeds did not germinate. So he ended up giving a whole gourd to the program, and this past spring. So we were able to get some of those seeds, and I planted 12 of them in tubs. Only 3 plants came up out of those 12. But we are growing gourds, and we were just like, we're so stoked about that. Right now, the last count, we had 10 baby gourds in there, about the size, about 1 or 2 inches, the size of that second picture, and a whole bunch of little bitty tiny ones that have the flowers attached to them. So we're hoping and praying that we'll get some seeds out of that so we can start continuing to grow more of these gourds. From what Ian said, that gourd that was given to them this past spring, it contained about the last surviving seed from this line. So it was very important that we can get this plant growing again. So I tell everybody when they come out to visit the garden and stuff, that this is a plant we're praying over. So continued prayers that this gourd will produce seeds that we'll be able to distribute eventually. Okay, again, I'm ending with a quote from Peter Pitchlin. It's intelligent females wield an influence which is powerful and at once effective. And certainly they give the embellishments which beautify and adorn our society. So these are pictures from 3 of the last 4 reunions we had. And Miss Mary has been at all the reunions we have had, and that's the singular picture we have of her there. So she's a sweetheart, feisty little thing. She's got some stories, and we're so happy when she can come visit with us. So their pictures. A little bit of credit where credit is due. A lot of the information I started off with was from the Wheelock story book. Then that was a jumping off point to do other research and stuff. Used a lot of Oklahoma Historical Society pictures, Bureau of American Ethnology maps, and of course I got a lot of stuff from Historic Preservation, Choctaw Nation. Let's see. Here we go. Got to make a plug. We do have a Facebook page. We keep it up when we were doing activities or events or things that are going on. That's where I would post them. So make sure you like that because I keep it posted updates with the Growing Hope Garden. So that's all I got, Jennifer.
That was great. Thanks, Dawn. I learned so much. I realized that I've never gotten to go out, and I didn't realize there were 18 buildings on the grounds. That was
Yeah,
news.
we had a goldfish pond.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You guys don't have plans to stock a goldfish pond in the near future?
No, but I tell you, Miss Mary was talking about they had sheep because they did have a spinning wheels. They did make yarn and stuff like that. So they did have sheep there. And when she was telling that story at our last reunion, I kind of looked at Ian and was like, "Ooh, can we get a sheep?"
Yes.
We don't know how to take care of sheep, but it's like that would be kind of cool. Start making our own Wheelock yarn and stuff.
Just need to find out if find the elusive Choctaw sheep. That's what we need. Well, we do have a couple of questions in the chat, and if anyone has questions for the Q&A, please go ahead and put them there as well. And so we'll go ahead and jump in with those. Celia has a couple of questions. She says, Dawn, you indicated that you recently learned some facts about Wheelock. Where are you gaining new information about Wheelock? Do people stop in and share their stories?
Yes, we have gotten some stories. Like I said, but Miss Mary talking about the sheep. You know, I just assumed that they were getting wool from some other place, but apparently Wheelock was raising sheep there. Every once in a while, I'll go through the Oklahoma Historical Society's Indian Pioneer papers, going through there and reading some information on Wheelock and stuff. So a little bits here and there is what I pick up on, but we do get a lot of stories from people that come through and say their grandmother went to school there or their mother went to school there. So Uh, I try to write them down, as they come in. So, but yeah, it just comes in sporadically and stuff like that.
And then a second question is from Celia said, I saw a picture earlier in the slide presentation that was a wall of roses with several girls standing in front of it. Is that what you were talking about with the rose walkway? And maybe.
Now what now? Okay.
So she, I think, was looking at the presentation and thought there might have been a photograph with roses in it.
I think there is one in the sports and extracurricular thing where they used wooden logs initially is what was the trellis built out of before they made the concrete ones. So it's like several girls, probably in the early 1900s dress type thing. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a picture.
Maybe, I don't know if in a minute here or, when you aren't thinking about answers to questions, you can pull it up, but no pressure if it's like, not in there, but.
Oh, there's that. Does this make it go back? Maybe.
Yeah, it should be the left arrow.
To that.
See if we can find it. But that would be really cool to kind of recreate that.
Can I hit escape and go to the main
You
thing?
can, yeah. If you hit escape and then you scroll up, should be able to kind of jump back a little quicker.
How do I scroll up?
Don's also on, someone else's computer, so we gotta cut her a little bit of slack. We're all jumping in here. Yes. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
That picture?
That looks like it might be what she's talking about. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that was the early version with the logs before they made the concrete pillars. Yes.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yay.
It's beautiful. That's really cool. Yeah, that would be really cool to recreate that. So then Karen has another comment. She said it's a great presentation. Thank you for sharing the information. Have you worked with or done any research on Goodland or Spencer Academy as well? I'm interested in learning more since I found family connections to the early history of those schools.
We have not. We started researching some of the schools, and probably Joe Wolf would be the person to ask. I work at Wheelock Academy Historic Site, so that's why this is my primary focus is Wheelock. So, so I don't know as much about the other schools as mine. This one.
Yeah.
Just a note here too. The picture that's up here, and you see the three ladies holding the basketball. The lady to the far left is my mom.
Oh, that's really sweet.
I said, this is because it's my presentation, I can stick whatever pictures I
Yes.
want. So she's throughout the presentation. I got pictures of her throughout the presentation.
That's cute. There was this great moment when we were going through drawer upstairs, and we were going through kind of a stack of papers. We found some odds and ends, some funny odds and ends.
Yeah.
In there. And then we there's a recipe from Dawn's mom in there that had always been in the books but didn't know where it was. So that was a cool moment.
That was very cool because I knew it existed because there was an accession record of it. I just hadn't been able to find it until that day you and I were in there digging through stuff and found it. It's like, oh my gosh! Now I made copies of it, and I haven't tried it yet. So it sounds like an unusual recipe, but I may have to try it sometime.
What was it a recipe for?
It was almost like a Jello salad with stuff
Huh.
in
Yeah.
it. Okay.
But that was fun. Well, Chelsea asks, were you kin to Betty Baker? Betty Baker. My granny went to school with Betty.
I was not kin to Betty Baker. I do know who she was. If it's the same lady I was thinking of, she's was worked as a WIC lady
Oh,
in Wheelock County.
she was reading Megan Baker's name under your
Okay,
video. Um so Megan
Megan.
would have to answer that question. But I'm sure that I guess probably connected to a lot of people through who your mom and your grandmother and your grandmother. I didn't realize your great grandmother went to Wheelock as well. That's really quite a connection. It's
Absolutely.
very cool.
Well, all four of us that work there, that are permanent workers there, we all had a family member attend Wheelock. So it's like the director Wanda Howard, her mom went to school there. So did Lawrence Batiste and Reggie Baker. Their moms went to school there. So
So that's a lot of meaningful connection and memories
absolutely.
there. Karen asks, how can we sign up or express interest in getting some of the heritage seeds? I'd love to grow some Choctaw veggies.
Oh, well, the application will come out in February, I believe, and it should be listed probably online. You'll see in the Choctaw Nation Facebook stuff, they'll start giving that information, but it should also come out in the tribal newspaper as well. But that will begin in February.
Okay.
And get it in as soon as possible because I believe they ran out of seeds pretty darn quick. So.
Celia has a final question, which is, are the girls' stories about Wheelock mostly positive experiences, negative, or a mix?
Mixed. Now, we hear a lot of good stories. Hear a lot of stories of being punished for speaking the language, for being homesick, that type of thing. But we also hear stories where they made lifelong friends. They learned how to play the piano, and it's something that's just stayed with them throughout their lives. Um, there are stories. I know there's stories out there because some of the individuals have indicated um, the really not so good stories. And but for one reason or another, and it may have been before the new staff has gotten there and stuff, that they told us they didn't want to. They weren't going to tell us their stories because we wouldn't want to hear them. And for me, because I went to school as a historian, and so those are the stories I want to hear as well. Because we know this, we know it was not all flowers and sunshine, that type of thing. So that I don't want to negate their experience by not hearing their stories without documenting it. So I would, we just got to find these ladies and let them know that yes, we want to hear their stories. We want them to be recognized that their experience was not as good as some other ones. But the stories that are being told to us, it is mixed. We get a lot of good and some bad as well.
Go ahead. I don't know if you're about to say something, but while we wait for if anyone else has questions, I have a couple of questions we can talk about. So if I were someone with a family member who went to Wheelock and I want to find out more about them and their time at Wheelock, where would I go to find out information?
Well, you can always start with us because we may have some file folders that has some information and stuff, or I believe the list we have is from 1945 to 54 of students who went to Wheelock. The list is from the National Archives Southwest Division in Fort Worth. So if the name is, no, that goes further back than that. I was thinking graduates. Anyway, but there we do have a list of students that the National Archives have some records on. So we can check that list and see if their name is on the list. And then we could forward them information to how to contact the National Archives themselves so they can get that information. It's a great experience going down there and seeing all this information and looking at through file folders, you know, because we went down there and I was able to find my grandmother's, which didn't have a whole lot of information in it, but my mother's had a lot of stuff in there. And so I'm just reading, you know, letters that her dad had sent to the school and the school responding to him and all that type of stuff. So it's really cool just to read all that stuff. We have found that though the records is not complete because we had a couple of ladies who obviously went to school at Wheelock, but we could not find their name on the list. So we don't know if the records were lost between them getting to from Wheelock to the National Archives and stuff. So it just may not be there, but we can always look it up and see if their name's on that list, and we will definitely forward them that information to the National Archives. But again, we have some information at Wheelock itself. We have lots of pictures, but unfortunately, a lot of pictures that were donated and given to us, they were not documented on who's all in the picture. So sometimes, you know, we still have some up in the hall and people come in and it's like, oh, there's mine. It's like, oh, we got to figure out who, you know, write down the name and where she is in that picture and stuff. So we know that who that is in that picture. But I encourage everybody just to, you know, go ahead and contact us and we'll get you to where you need to go to find out information about parents and grandparents.
Yeah, that's great because I think you know, they have a lot of information, but one of the things that was clear when we went down there is that you really to go as an individual, you have to be related to someone
Yes.
who is there at the school. So that was kind of an interesting thing. So not an open archive from that sense. And then do you guys have, I know with the current year and everything, the last year and a half, things are on hold, but do you have reunions planned in the future? And what, you know, what do those reunions look like?
Well, we just recently had a reunion. We kept it just to the ladies and their friends. So it was, oh God, I forgot the date now. It was in June. We had it in June. We had 3 individuals show up, and one of them was Miss Mary Jacob and Lydia Steele and Margie Pollard. Those 3 ladies did come, and that's why we were able to visit with them and talk to them. And it was we kept it informal, so it was probably maybe about 30, 40 people there all together, including, you know, family members, and we had some guest speakers and stuff. Then a little bit later, and I'm sorry, her name had just left. Oh, Lucy Olive, Miss Olive, Lucille, maybe. Anyway, she came about 12:30 after we had our, you know, little presentations and everything. We were all eating lunch, and we're probably winding down from eating lunch. She comes in, and I see his car drive up, so I walk out there. Because she looks like an older lady, and I start talking to her. And she is an 86-year-old lady from Boca Chica, I believe. And she drove all the way from Boca Chica to Wheelock to come to the reunion because she did go to school there. And so I was like, well, come on in. So we bring her in and we got her food, and she just starts telling stories from there. But it was like, forget what time she said she started, but yeah, she said she came through Hugo. She stopped at the farmer's market and made another stop and stuff like that. So that's why she didn't get there till 12:30. But we were like, oh my gosh, it's like she drove here all by herself, 86 years old. It was a feisty little thing too. But so we had 4 ladies that did show up. I did do a search prior to sending out all the invitations. Um, and it's unfortunate and it's kind of sad for us that we lost at least 6 of our former students last year. I don't know if it was from COVID. Some of them they're all getting older. So that's why we're planning to have reunions every year now. I think at some point it's just going to be, we're going to continue to invite family members because a lot of them, want to learn, see where their parents or grandparents went to school. So we have started collecting those names and information from individuals who had family members to go to Wheelock. So we're including them on our mailing list as well. So next year when we have a reunion, we're going to invite them to come. And I saw that I think it was Ted Williams said it was Miss Lucille Olive, and she's from Bennington. So that's correct. I knew it started with a B, so.
That's great. That's really sweet that you guys got to get a reunion in more recently. We had a question from Alicia about finding school records in Dallas. So I think Dawn answered that a little bit earlier about the National Archives in Fort Worth. And so if you contact Dawn, she can tell you a little bit more about the process of going through and doing that. And then Chelsea asked, has the Choctaw Nation considered creating a reconciliation program for students of Wheelock and working through trauma or families of students?
Oh, we have not heard anything about that. But that might be interesting to look into because, I don't remember many stories our mom told of that, but I imagine there is some, residual, not necessarily trauma, but feelings about being at Wheelock. But then again, she left after 1 year in public school and went to another boarding school. So I don't see that as a big issue with our family, with her at least. But I don't know. That might be something to look into to see if that would be feasible. But we have not been approached by any other program with Choctaw Nation to do something like that. I guess it might have to start on our end. I mean, if family members come in and make mention to that, then definitely I would want to look to programs that might be able to help us with that.
So that's all the questions we have right now. But again, we have a little bit more time. So if you have another question, a burning question, my question for maybe like Sandra was on this in the participants earlier. I don't know if she's still on, but about what I guess it was a year ago, we went to the Gilcrease and they had these papers of a pageant that was held in the 1930s as a centennial, like a commemoration of the Trail of Tears walk. And so my question is, what do you think about I think Sandra was like, we can't wait that long, but 100-year kind of anniversary commemoration, of the commemoration or something, because they have these papers in a collection from a historian from Valiant who had like the script of the play and a diorama.
We had the script too, so
yeah.
I thought about that because it's like, well, 2032, that's, 11 years from now? start working on it. But you know what? Our other idea, and again, COVID just kind of put a stop to everything we've been kind of wanting to do. Fort Townsend Historic Site does really good programs throughout the year where they use reenactors and stuff. And one of the main thing they do is they do a Dokesville candlelight tour in October that highlights some history of Dokesville. Whether one year they did the stand waiting, end of the Civil War type thing, or they just do all sorts of really cool stories. It's like, well, why can't we do that? Why can't we have a candlelight tour that tells the story of Wheelock, that does some kind of, and there is kind of a loose script that is written. John Davis is the regional director of OHS for Fort Townsend and some of the other sites there. But so he does a loose script, but a lot of these people, they're just going, they're good at what they do, so they're just going off the top of the head with it. And so they have some guidelines in the script and stuff. It's like, well, why can't we do that, Wheelock? Why can't we figure out a loose script, get together, get costuming and stuff like that, and invite people come out and do a tour of Wheelock at a candlelight tour type thing. So we had thought about it, my sister and I, but we just haven't sat down and come up with some kind of scenarios and stuff like that. And it might be come together working with other people, sitting down, let's just come up with some good ideas and stuff like that. And then kind of piggybacking off of what Dokesville does in October. So I looked at the script that they used in 1932 for that celebration, that centennial celebration, and it's extensive and it's kind of good, but I don't know if we can get people to do that much stuff to it. Again, we'd have to work on costuming because they had a lot of people working on that, and apparently it was a really neat little celebration that they put together.
Yeah, Sandra's mom, apparently talked about it, and it left a huge impression. And I wish Sandra was able to jump on and tell us all about it. But and Sandra was looking for this record for years and years, and then finally, so it obviously left a big impression. And apparently there were just tons of wagons, a whole parade, and so
all on it, yeah. Especially when they did the Trail of Tears part of it. Yeah, they had all of that in there. And it's like,
and the girls were acting, and I can just imagining a Wheelock age girl playing Peter Pitchlin and some other Wheelock age girl playing
well, I think they asked people from the community too to help. So that would have been, but they also did other things at the end of the year celebrations after the school year ended. The girls would put on other little pageants where they did operettas, they did ballet dancing and other musical stuff, and they just went all out at the end of the school year thing. So there may be little smaller things we can do other than the 1932 celebration, but yeah, that would be kind of neat to, what is it, bicentennial. Oh, Sandra says she can't figure out her tablet.
Yeah, I don't think you can turn on your video, Sandra, but next time we'll, invite you to jump in there and, but no pressure, Dawn. You guys have already a lot going on. So, I mean,
well, if we have to get shut down again, then I'll start working on a script for maybe the candlelight thing.
There you go.
Cool. I think that would be so cool. We'll just have to have people that can make our dresses and stuff like that. But I tell you what, I am not wearing a corset. You see some of the clothes that they wore, the teachers and stuff, their waists are like 21 inches, it looks like. It's like they were tiny.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you guys have some clothing on display and some other things in the museum. So and some, you got some archaeological things from the building as well. So trying to remember everything. You can say better what all is on display at Wheelock.
Yeah, they found a lot of artifacts underneath the Pushmataw Hall when they were stabilizing the foundation. So they found a lot of, just like pencils and other little things here and there. But some of it was donated, like eyeglasses and paper dolls and stuff like that the girls would have played with and utilized during their time there.
Well, if no one has any more questions, Dawn, do you have anything else you wanted to add? Great.
No, just like come on out and come visit us, and we'll be happy to give you the whole tour.
Well, so
people, you have to wear a mask, but you can come out and still visit us right now.
you're still open, yeah. Well, yeah, we miss seeing everyone. That's definitely true, and hopefully soon you guys can have more community events again, do some movie nights.
Movie nights, yes.
Never made it out to I feel like, Dawn, you sometimes pick scary movies, so I'm a little scared off with that.
Not real scary.
No. So before I stop the recording, I just wanted to say, Yako Ki, thank you for everyone for joining us, for your questions, and especially to Dawn for spending her afternoon with us and sharing this history of Wheelock. And Megan Baker is the usual normal host for Chata Tasholi, but we'll be on a brief hiatus here, but the series will be back in the fall a little bit later. But in the meantime, you can catch up with recordings that you might have missed through the Choctaw Nation YouTube channel or ChoctawNationCulture.com website under Chata Tasholi. So, Chipintalachiki, see you next time, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. And then Megan, you'll have to stop the recording there, but